There lived a woman called Bola. She was married and lived with her husband, Ade, who was a farmer. They were married for 8 years without children to call their own, and that made Bola a laughingstock in the village. All the women in the village would always mock her and call her a cursed woman. One day, Bola went to the market to buy some fish which she will use to prepare her husband's favorite meal. When she got to the market, they refused selling to her, and when she asked for reasons, they replied her saying that the newly married women have all given birth and some are heavily pregnant for their husbands. But her case is different. She has been married for 8 years, no child, talk more of children to show, and that made her a cursed woman, and they don't want to partake in her curse. After hearing all that from the market women, Bola could not control her tears, and she cried her way back home bitterly. 3 days later, her mother-in-law came to the house with a beautiful maiden whom she introduced as Tiwa, and soon to be the second wife whom will bear her son children. Ade's mother tried all she could to convince her son to send his wife out of the house, but did not succeed, and she forced Tiwa to start staying and living with them. And since then, Bola's life became a nightmare. Tiwa tried all she could to get Ade's attention and love, but all her efforts went in vain. She tried so many times to get him to bed with her, but always turned her down each time she tries. He also told her that the only woman he would touch is his wife Bola and no one else. Hearing that made Tiwa more angry as she walked away. One night, Ade came back home drunk. His wife was surprised to see him in that state, for he had never taken a bottle of alcohol, let alone being drunk. She quickly carried him to his room to clean him up properly. She laid him down on his bed and went to the kitchen to get some buckets of water. But before she could return back to the room, the door was closed. She tried to open it but noticed it was locked from the inside. And suddenly, she heard Tiwa screaming and mourning deeply. She tried all she could to open the door, but could not, as she began to weep bitterly. The next morning, Ade woke up. To his greatest surprise, he saw Tiwa laying beside him naked. He was shocked to see her. He quickly woke her up, asking her how she got into his room and why naked. She replied him saying, what should have been done long ago happened the previous night. Ade was so angry, and he pushed her out of his room and also warned her never to come close to him or his room again. He quickly went to the living room in search of his wife. He met her crying, and he tried all he could to explain to her, but she told him not to explain, that he was drunk and had no control of himself, and that made Tiwa to take advantage of him. He promised his wife never to drink again, and they laughed and hugged each other. Few days later, Tiwa started feeling feverish and throwing up. They took her to the midwife, where she was confirmed pregnant. When Ade's mother heard about the news, she was so very happy. She quickly came to the house dancing that finally she will be a grandmother after waiting for so long. She also told her son to throw Bola out of the house and marry Tiwa since Bola could not give him children. She tried all she could to brainwash him to marry Tiwa since she was pregnant, but all her efforts went in vain. The next day, she went to Bola. She told Bola if she wants to remain in that house, she should make sure and do everything possible to make her son marry Tiwa. At first, she refused, but after giving it a second thought, she decided to talk to her husband. One night, after a long thought, Bola woke her husband up and pleaded with him to marry Tiwa since she's already pregnant for him, and that she don't want the villagers to start calling the innocent child names. She pleaded with her husband for hours, and finally he agreed to marry Tiwa if that would make her happy, but gave her a condition. The condition was that he will only marry Tiwa after the child is being born and after the naming ceremony. Bola agreed to the conditions and they both went back to sleep happily. The next morning, Bola told Tiwa all that her husband said. Tiwa had no choice than to accept the conditions. 9 months after, Tiwa was in labor and was taken to the midwife's house where she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Ade was happy about the news, but at the same time, he was not happy, and he wished that his wife was the one that gave birth instead of Tiwa. Bola was so happy that finally her husband now have a child to call his own. They celebrated the arrival of the baby for days, and soon the naming ceremony date was fixed, which was to take place in 7 market days. And all the villagers was told to join them on that day for the naming of the baby. One early morning, Ade was hot and he's in the mood to have his wife. He could not get hold of himself and he held his wife from behind and started kissing her back and arms and finally penetrated inside her and made love to her. 7 days later, on the naming ceremony day, all the villagers and people from the neighboring village gathered at Ade's house to celebrate with him, when suddenly the chief priest arrived and said, "It is a taboo and against the traditions of the land for another man to name another man's child." Ade, his wife, and the villagers were all surprised, for they don't understand what the chief priest was saying. Tiwa was so scared and surprised to see the chief priest. She tried to stop him from letting the cat out of the bag, but the chief priest reminded her, saying that agreement was agreement. Ade was confused the more, and he asked the chief priest what agreement and with whom did he made an agreement with. The chief priest pointed at Tiwa, saying that she had an agreement with him, as he started to narrate what transpired between them. Many months back, Tiwa came to his shrine and asked him to sleep with her and get her pregnant in order to get Ade's love and attention, and also for him to marry her. They both agreed that If she gave birth to a baby girl, he will have no say and won't interfere. But if she gave birth to a baby boy, she will bring the child to his shrine for him to name him. And after 6 years, he would take his child and start training and preparing him to be the next chief priest of the land. But after giving birth, she tried to hide the son from him and also name him behind his back. On hearing that, Ade was very angry, and at the same time, he was happy. He asked Tiwa if all the chief priest said was true. Tiwa admitted and said it was all true. She also said that she was already pregnant before the night he came back home drunk. That she was also responsible for him being drunk that night. She further said that she paid one of the bar keeper to make sure he gets drunk in order for her to take advantage of him and pin the pregnancy on him. Ade was so shocked and started laughing, saying that he thanked the gods for not allowing his mother's pressure to get the better part of him by marrying Tiwa. And he blamed his mother for everything that happened. He went inside, brought out all that belongs to Tiwa, and threw her out of his house while he handed the baby to the chief priest and asked him to take good care of him. The chief priest thanked him for doing the right thing and left with his child. Ade's mother pleaded with him and Bola to forgive her, and they forgave her. Few days later, Bola started throwing up and feeling feverish. Her temperature was high and her breast was increased in size. Ade took her to the midwife for checkup and she was confirmed pregnant. Ade could not believe his ears as he danced for joy and thanked the gods for putting a smile on his face. 9 months later, Bola gave birth to a set of twins. Ade and his mother showered her with so much love and affection, and from that day on, they lived happily ever after.